A useless fool with the face of a god walks into a room full of sharks. He leaves owning the whole ocean. A woman used him as a good luck charm. She watches her family silk empire burn to the ground. White phosphorus caused the destruction. The fire was his idea. Her tears fell as the empire vanished. A criminal underworld boss is hired to bury our hero alive. The key word here is hired. The man does not stay buried. The most feared warrior woman in the city is built like a goddess. She fights like a hurricane. She grabs a whip and punishes anyone who looks at her husband the wrong way. That husband is this man. Everyone once called him a brainless idiot. Somewhere in the middle of this, he writes a scandalous novel starring his former wife. He distributes it across multiple provinces. Her reputation becomes ash. The look on her face is priceless. Let us go back to the beginning. We must understand how a fool became the most dangerous man in the kingdom. You have to see how low they pushed him first. Meet Shen Lang. On Earth in his past life, this man was extraordinary. He was a chemist and a doctor. He was a genius who could read a patient body like a textbook. He synthesized compounds that would make a modern lab jealous. Life has a brutal sense of humor. A factory accident left him disfigured beyond recognition. The world treated him like garbage because his face was no longer pretty. Then, an American missile finished the job. He wakes up in a completely different body. This new world has ancient Chinese vibes and mythical kingdoms. The body he now lives in is gorgeous. He is tall and chiseled. His face makes people stop in the middle of a sentence. There is just one problem. The original owner of this body was a disaster. He could not read after 10 years of school. He lost every fight he ever tried. This included a legendary loss against a chicken. His reputation was the beautiful idiot. It gets worse. The original Shen Lang volunteered to marry into the rich Su family. He was treated as a good luck charm. Their daughter Su Kanshin was sick. The plan was for him to marry her so she would get better. Once she recovered, the Su family maids attacked his father. They beat the old man in the street like they were swatting a bug. This is the world our hero wakes up into. He has a new body and a new life. A giant cheating system is fused into his skull. His wife Su Kanshin walks in. She is finished pretending. She cries fake tears to cover her tracks. Then her new fiancé Jiang Jin strolls in. He is high-ranking and arrogant. He has never faced real consequences. Jiang Jin does something that makes the blood go cold. He kisses Su Kanshin right in front of Shen Lang. Fans call this specific situation betrayal. They give him 1 hour. He has 1 hour to pack his things and leave. They hire an underworld boss named Tian Hang. He is supposed to bury Shen Lang alive. Now the story flips. The new Shen Lang is not a fool. He has a fully functioning modern laptop fused into his mind. It includes a complete medical diagnostic system. He has X-ray vision that he can configure instantly. He has decades of chemistry and medical knowledge. He can scan a body from across a room. He can read text through walls. He calculates complex formulas in seconds. A laboratory team would take weeks to do the same. The entire world sees a beautiful idiot. They have no idea what is coming. Shen Lang sees the assassination attempt by Tian Hang coming. He does not use dramatic martial arts. Physically, he is still in a body that lost to a chicken. He survives through brains and perfect timing. He escapes and creates a plan. He does not run away or hide in the mountains. He calculates the situation like a scientist. He decides that he needs leverage. He finds leverage with his biological family. His father is being crushed by a corrupt system. Their family name has been dragged through the mud for years. Shen Lang does not see this as a burden. He sees an asset and a base of operations. His first move is medical. Many people in the city are sick. Local doctors cannot treat these conditions. They only use herbs and prayers. Shen Lang has 10,000 years of pharmaceutical knowledge. He begins to perform what look like miracles. He diagnoses a condition that 3 specialists missed. He prescribes medicine that works within days. Word gets around fast. In this city, a real cure is worth more than gold. He starts building a layer of social armor. He gains a reputation 1 patient at a time. People whisper about him in a new tone. He is no longer called an idiot. He is someone else now. The Su family and Jiang Jin celebrate because they think they won. They have not. We must discuss the white phosphorus moment. It deserves a spotlight. The Su family runs a silk workshop. It is their money machine and their prestige. They used their wealth to bully and crush others for years. Shen Lang burns it down. He does not act like a movie villain. He engineers the destruction. He uses white phosphorus. It is a compound with very specific combustion properties. He introduces it at the right time. The workshop is gone. Nobody connects the fire to the beautiful idiot. They threw him out an hour after the assassination attempt. They think he is buried somewhere. They think he is nothing. This is not the most devastating thing he does. The novel is his greatest weapon. Shen Lang understands the power of information and story. His enemies do not understand this. In this society, reputation and honor are everything. Words can be more destructive than any army. He writes a scandalous and explicit novel. The main character is clearly based on Su Kanshin. Her name and family are barely disguised. Everyone knows exactly who the book is about. He distributes it across multiple provinces. Her pristine and social climbing image is absolutely destroyed. People talk about the book in many cities. Scholars debate if the author knew her personally. Merchants sell copies for a high price. Su Kanshin was once untouchable, but is now a punchline. The workshop is gone, and the novel is everywhere. The Su family loses money and reputation. They come crawling back to Shen Lang. This is the man they tried to kill. They need his help to save their finances. They need a formula for a new product. Shen Lang lets them beg. He makes them pay 3 times the market price. Su Kanshin shows up humbled and desperate. Her new partner Jiang Jin slaps her in front of Shen Lang. Sometimes the universe does the work for you. We should not get too far ahead. Another piece of the story changes everything. Her name is Jin Mulan. Shen Lang waited. This was perhaps the hardest thing to understand about him. If you were used to protagonists who punched first and never strategized, he seemed different. He had the information and the proof. He could have walked into the study of Jin Sakai right then. He could have dropped the revelation about Su Nan like a bomb. However, he did not act yet. He waited until there was a formal meeting. The Count and his senior advisors gathered to discuss the military situation. Su Nan was also included in this group. They met to discuss the imperial pressure bearing down on the city. Important people sat in one room. They were making decisions that would affect thousands of lives. Shen Lang asked to attend the meeting. There was some resistance to his request. He was the son-in-law, but he had a reputation as a fool. He held no official military or political role. Some advisors thought his presence was inappropriate or a distraction. Su Nan notably suggested that it was not necessary for him to be there. This was exactly the kind of tell Shen Lang was watching for. Jin Sakai overruled the objections. His file on Shen Lang had been updated many times. He was curious what the man would do when given a real stage. Therefore, Shen Lang received his seat at the table. The meeting began. Advisors gave their advice. Generals discussed troop positions and supply lines. The political situation was laid out in careful, formal language. They discussed the demands of the emperor and the timeline. They also looked at the options available to the Count. Su Nan participated smoothly in the discussion. He acted like a man who had been a trusted advisor for years. He was confident and measured. He said all the right things. Shen Lang sat quietly through the first 20 minutes. He watched and scanned the room. He built a complete picture in his mental system. Then he started asking questions. These were not accusations. Instead, they were specific and precise questions. The questions seemed innocent. He asked about supply routes and communication channels. He asked about the timeline of certain information reaching different parties. On the surface, he sounded like a new person trying to understand. However, the questions were surgical. Each question clipped a thread of the cover story used by Su Nan. Each honest answer revealed a gap. Information the Count thought was secure had reached the imperial court too fast. Su Nan answered the first few questions smoothly. He had years of practice at this. Then Shen Lang asked a question that had no safe answer. He referenced a specific piece of sensitive operational information. Only the people in that room should have known it. Yet, it appeared in an imperial court document 3 days before the meeting. Shen Lang had obtained a copy through his own channels. He placed the document on the table. The room went very quiet. Su Nan did not break his expression dramatically. He was too experienced for such a mistake. However, the internal scanner used by Shen Lang caught small details. He saw a slight change in breathing and tension around the jaw. There was a split-second calculation happening behind controlled eyes. Shen Lang did not yell or point dramatically. He just looked at Su Nan with a calm and pleasant expression. He already knew how this would end. He asked very quietly how that information got there. The entire room turned toward Sunan. For the first time in decades, Sunan had nothing to say. The reaction from the Count was not loud. Jin Sakai had built a city and an army through disciplined action. Disciplined men do not shout when they are betrayed. Instead, they go very still. Then they act. Authorities removed Sunan from the meeting and from his position. A full investigation followed over the next several days. It confirmed everything the evidence had pointed to. The betrayal was deep and many pieces of information were compromised. Sunan had been feeding the imperial court for a long time. It was a serious blow to the inner circle of the Count. Years of careful trust had been compromised. However, it would have been infinitely worse if the betrayal continued. The gate might have been opened from the inside during a siege. The Count might have deployed defenses based on a strategy the enemy knew. Shen Lang had just saved the city. Jin Sakai knew this was true. The Count and his son-in-law spoke privately a few days later. It was not an emotional conversation. These were not emotional men at their core. The talk was honest and direct. Jin Sakai asked how long Shen Lang had known about Sunan. Shen Lang told him the truth. He included the reasoning for his timing. He explained exactly what he was calculating and why. He did this without any false modesty or performance of humility. The Count listened to everything. Then the Count sat with the information for a moment. He told Shen Lang that he was not what he had been told. The meaning was very clear. Shen Lang answered that he never was. This conversation was the turning point in their relationship. It was not the medical moments or household politics that changed things. It was not even the commercial success in the background. This was the moment Jin Sakai made a decision. He realized his son-in-law was not a tool to be managed. Shen Lang was now a partner. He was a genuine and legitimate partner in a complicated game. The Count had been playing this game alone for a long time. He started bringing Shen Lang into real conversations. He did this as a contributor, not just a courtesy. Shen Lang had been operating on zero official power. He used only his brain since he woke up in that body. Suddenly, he had the backing of a significant noble. Observe what happened next. His commercial empire now had noble protection and logistics. The medical reputation he built through targeted interventions grew. He now had the official endorsement of the Count. People from Zhangjin had been trying to steal his formulas and compounds. Now those products were legally protected by the political power of the Jin family. What was once a quiet underground operation became much more visible. It also became much more powerful. Let us talk about the money. The amount was genuinely absurd. In this era, the market for effective medicine was unlimited. People got sick everywhere and all the time. Existing solutions were inconsistent or even harmful. Shen Lang had access to formulas from a civilization 2,000 years ahead. He was not just competing in the existing market. He was creating a new one. He started with compounds for common and painful conditions. These issues often devastated families and kept people from working. Physicians had failed to address these problems for generations. He produced the medicine consistently and at scale. He designed the supply chain himself. The quality was far beyond anything else available. The first customers became walking advertisements. Word spread through merchant networks at a high speed. This even surprised the calculations of Shen Lang. Within weeks, he had orders coming in from multiple cities. Within months, provincial merchants made dedicated trips to mythical Turtle City. They came specifically for his products. The revenue generated was transformative. The money helped Shen Lang and the economic base of the Count. It increased tax revenue and trade relationships. This commercial activity made the city more valuable. It also made the city harder to besiege. Half the surrounding region had an economic interest in the city staying open. The Count watched his son-in-law make the city safer through commerce. He added another update to the file. Meanwhile, Mulan was having her own evolution. Jin Mulan had been exceptional her entire life. She was the best fighter and tactician in her group. She was the most reliable instrument for the Count. However, she had also been almost entirely alone in her excellence. Her level of competence did not leave room for peers. It was hard to be friends with people you were always protecting. You could not relax with people who were always impressed by you. Shen Lang was the first person who was not impressed by her. This was not because he failed to recognize her skill. He absolutely did. His diagnostic system had scanned her physique many times. It reported numbers that explained how she moved and hit. He knew exactly how dangerous she was. He was just not afraid of her. He did not perform awe for her. He treated her like a colleague and an equal. He took her input seriously. He factored her capabilities into his plans like a general with his best asset. He showed respect and precision rather than worship. This was new for Mulan. She did not know what to do with this immediately. In their early interactions, she expected his mask to slip. She waited for the real foolish man to emerge. She waited for him to do something stupid. However, he never did. Instead, he asked questions during military planning. One question reorganized her entire approach and made it better. He was not showing off or trying to prove her wrong. It was just a specific and precise question. It exposed an assumption she had made without realizing it. She sat with that realization for a while. Then there was the moment with the cavalry unit. One of her commanders made a comment about Shen Lang. This man had served under her for years and respected her. He made the comment to other soldiers in a private conversation. He mentioned the fool and the pretty face. He questioned what Mulan was doing with such a person. Mulan heard it all. She heard everything in her own camp. What followed was not a quiet conversation. The whip came out. The commander had survived actual battles, but he received a public reminder. The hierarchy was made clear. The reminder was not savage. It was controlled, precise, and professional. However, it was unmistakable. Someone in the household told Shen Lang about this later. His reaction was complicated. Part of him knew this was disproportionate. He felt he should probably address it. Another part of him watched a woman defend him with intensity. She defended him like a military position. He experienced feelings he had not had in a long time. This was true for either of his lifetimes. He did not address the matter directly. He was smart enough to know her nature. Telling Mulan to stop defending him would be like telling a river to stop flowing. Instead, he focused on giving her fewer reasons to defend him. He became obviously and publicly competent. This made the negative comments unsustainable. He used this same strategy on every front. He did not fight the perception directly. He made the old perception obsolete through his actions. Now we return to Jiang Jin. That man had been escalating his actions steadily. The situation was about to come to a head. The problem for Jiang Jin was structural. He was an arrogant man who underestimated his enemy. Every attempt to correct his mistake made the situation worse. The plan to steal formulas failed. The plan to use social pressure also failed. He ran into the protection of the Jin family. Direct intimidation attempts were met with the efficient response of Mulan. Jiang Jin could not reach Shen Lang. This failure became a significant status problem. People who knew the history noticed a pattern. The senior official Jiang Jin was consistently outmaneuvered. He struggled against a man whom everyone called a fool. Whispers were not kind to the reputation of Jiang Jin. Su Kanxin remained attached to him because she had no other options. Her family finances were completely devastated. The workshop was gone. The scandal novel made her socially isolated as the story circulated. Her fiancé was her path to an elevated life. However, he became increasingly volatile. He took his anger out on the people closest to him. He focused this aggression specifically on her. Jiang Jin eventually slapped her in front of Shen Lang. This moment was inevitable within the architecture of the story. It was the conclusion of a pattern that everyone saw except Su Kanxin. She chose a man of status and cruelty over a man she thought was beneath her. The man of status turned out to be empty inside. The man she discarded proved to be a formidable leader. The assault happened at a public function. Nobles, merchants, and city officials gathered there. Appearances mattered enormously at such formal events. Jiang Jin felt frustrated because things did not go his way. Su Kanxin might have pushed back or simply existed in his vision. Regardless of the reason, he hit her in front of witnesses. He did this in front of Shen Lang. The reaction in the room was complex. There was shock at the public scene. Others calculated the political meaning of the event. Domestic violence in a formal setting caused immense social damage. Shen Lang watched the event with a serene expression. He had predicted this behavior months ago. Under pressure, Jiang Jin reverted to his core character. Public behavior serves as evidence that political machines cannot explain away. Shen Lang did not intervene dramatically. He did not need to act. Instead, he ensured the right people witnessed the event. This included officials who were undecided about the political trajectory of Zhang Jin. It also included merchants who considered his patronage. Shen Lang managed the information flow quietly and efficiently. By the end of the evening, Zhang Jin ruined his own position. He did more damage than Shen Lang could have engineered directly. Su Kanxin stood in the wreckage of her choices. Her reputation was destroyed and her workshop was gone. Her powerful fiancé had just hit her at a formal function. She eventually approached Shen Lang. She did not offer a formal apology. Instead, she presented a business proposition. She needed a formula or a commercial deal to help her family. She offered remaining social connections and information about the operations of Zhang Jin. Shen Lang listened to her entire proposal. He offered a deal at 3 times the market price. There were no exceptions and no sentiment. If she wanted his products and protection, she had to pay. Su Kanxin accepted the terms. Even at 3 times the price, she was better off with a genuine product. Shen Lang was not being cruel for the sake of cruelty. He priced the deal correctly for the market and their history. The interaction ended and she left the area. Shen Lang felt that a chapter of his life had fully closed. The woman who once tried to bury him was now a customer. She paid a significant premium for his goods. In a lesser story, the revenge would be complete. However, the siege was still approaching. Imperial pressure on the Count did not relax. The political war for mythical Turtle City accelerated. A new threat emerged from a direction Shen Lang had not mapped. This faction was connected to the imperial court. The group was not interested in negotiation or commerce. The whip of Mulan or the formulas of Shen Lang would not deter them. They wanted the city and prepared an army to take it. The threat was not a metaphor or political pressure. Actual soldiers and siege equipment moved toward the city. The Count knew this was possible for months. The betrayal by Su Nan accelerated the timeline. The window for a clean operation had closed. Jin Sakai called a war council. This time, no one questioned the presence of Shen Lang. The military situation was genuinely serious. The imperial faction possessed superior numbers and supply lines. They used the authority of the emperor as political cover. Any city that resisted was framed as a rebellion. This made it harder for neighboring nobles to offer support. The Count relied on local knowledge and a fortified position. Mulan commanded a highly trained cavalry force. Shen Lang had built economic relationships with local merchants. These people now had a stake in the city's survival. Shen Lang began calculating the balance of power. Mulan managed the physical defense of the city. She prepared fortifications and managed supply inventories. Her systematic competence made the soldiers feel calmer. Shen Lang respected her expertise and stayed out of military matters. He focused his attention on intelligence. The Sunan network was gone, but other sources remained. Merchants and travelers moved through both spheres of influence. Shen Lang had built relationships with these people for months. He activated these channels through the natural flow of trade. Merchants shared information freely during business conversations. Within 2 weeks, Shen Lang had a clear picture of the approaching force. He documented the numbers and the supply situation. He identified the specific commanders and their tactical tendencies. Jin Sakai was quiet for a long moment when he saw the document. The Count asked how this information was obtained. Shen Lang explained how the merchant network functioned. He did not explain his advanced mental processing. The Count absorbed the information and asked for a plan. Shen Lang had been waiting for this invitation. He presented a strategic architecture with multiple levels. He identified the variables and found the leverage points. The biggest strength of the imperial force was its size. However, this size created a heavy dependency on supplies. Their legitimacy depended on a specific political narrative. Shen Lang argued they should fight the ability of the army to function. Mulan listened to this framework with focused attention. She provided corrections regarding terrain features she knew well. Shen Lang incorporated her corrections immediately and without ego. This was their first time working as genuine partners. Mulan provided tactical ground knowledge and military instincts. Shen Lang provided strategic intelligence and an analytical framework. Together, they built a plan the Imperial commander would not expect. Chemistry then entered the battlefield. Shen Lang identified a vulnerability at a narrow valley passage. The approaching force had to move provisions through this choke point. Traditional disruption involved cavalry raids on wagon trains. Raids were costly for their small force. Shen Lang proposed ruining the supply chain without direct contact. He planned to produce specific chemical compounds from his database. These substances would be introduced into water sources or storage facilities. This would make provisions unusable or cause non-lethal illness. The goal was operational degradation rather than mass casualties. The compounds would be incapacitating rather than lethal. Shen Lang discussed this directly with Mulan. She needed to understand exactly what she was authorizing. Mulan asked hard questions about unintended spread. She also expressed concern about civilian exposure to the chemicals. Shen Lang worried about the political implications if the mechanism was identified. He answered all of Mulan's questions. He had already run the calculations. He showed Mulan the design choices he made to limit the radius of effect. These choices also limited the duration of the impact. Mulan thought about the proposal for 2 days. Then she authorized the plan. The operation ran for 10 days. This occurred before the Imperial force reached the city. The results of the operation were cumulative. From the outside, the approaching army seemed to have bad luck. The troops suffered from spoiled provisions and waterborne illness. Logistical confusion grew as supply assumptions failed. The Imperial commander was experienced. He recognized that something was wrong. The commander sped up his timeline. He tried to reach the city before his force degraded further. This was exactly what Shen Lang predicted. The army began a forced march under poor conditions. They pressed a compromised force into a prepared defensive position. This was the worst possible tactical situation. The commander knew the danger. However, the commander did not have a better option. The forces arrived at mythical Turtle City in poor shape. They were under extreme time pressure. The supply situation had deteriorated significantly since the march began. Mulan was ready for the fight. The cavalry engagement opened the battle. Surviving soldiers would describe the fight to their grandchildren. Mulan led from the front during the engagement. This caused Shen Lang to have 15 separate anxiety episodes. Mulan rode like a legend during the battle. Her unit moved with perfect coordination. They had practiced for years under her strict drilling. Mulan did not tolerate any imprecision. The first engagement went badly for the Imperial force. It was not a total catastrophe. The Imperial troops were still professional and numerous. However, the fight was harder than they expected. Their intelligence about the city was outdated. Some intelligence had come through the Sunan Channel before it was burned. The actual defensive capability of the city was very strong. The Imperial forces pulled back to reassess their situation. Then the commander sent a message to the city. Technically, the message was a negotiation opener. The language of the message remained aggressive. It framed the message as an opportunity for the Count. However, the message told Shen Lang something important. The Imperial forces were buying time. Their supply situation was worse than the commander admitted. They needed several days to stabilize their logistics. Only then could they start a sustained assault. Shen Lang brought this analysis to the War Council. The leaders wanted to reinforce defenses. They planned to dig in deeper. They wanted to prepare for the assault. The council preferred to let the enemy come to them. Shen Lang suggested the opposite approach. He advised against letting the enemy recover. The supply chain damage was an ongoing condition. Their provisions continued to degrade every day. The Imperial operational capacity decreased over time. A long delay would hurt the political narrative. The conflict began to look like a real war. The Imperial supporters did not want a long war. Shen Lang wanted to press the enemy while they were off balance. Mulan did not have enough troops for an open assault. Instead, they planned targeted disruptions and raids. These actions cut communication lines. They turned the siege into a situation the enemy could not sustain. Mulan looked at the operational picture. She performed calculations in her head with great speed. She had spent her life doing this work. Mulan nodded in agreement. The next 72 hours were the most intense of the campaign. Mulan's cavalry operated in 3 separate sequences. Each sequence targeted a specific Imperial vulnerability. They hit supply routes and communication positions. They also attacked a flanking unit. This attack forced the enemy to rebuild their plan. Each operation was precise and calibrated. The units moved in and out quickly. The Imperial force could not organize a response. Shen Lang predicted where the enemy would react next. By the 3rd day, the commander faced a new challenge. The city was actively outmaneuvering him. His supply situation became critical. His assault plan was completely disrupted. Political pressure for a quick victory increased. The commander took the only path left. He opened real negotiations with the city leaders. This was not just an aggressive opening message. They discussed terms and concessions. Both sides looked for a way to step back. The situation was untenable for the attacking force. The Count handled the formal negotiations. Jin Sakai was an experienced political operator. He knew how to extract maximum concessions. The terms were better than expected. Shen Lang sat in on the negotiations. He did not speak much. Occasionally, he passed a note to Jin Sakai. The Count read these notes with complete trust. He had faith in Shen Lang's judgment. The leaders signed the agreement. The Imperial force withdrew from the area. Mythical Turtle City remained standing. The reaction inside the city was quiet. It was not a roaring celebration. The people felt relief after the serious threat. They had operated at high intensity for weeks. Finally, the citizens could breathe again. After the conflict, Mulan found Shen Lang in his office. He was surrounded by documents and material samples. Shen Lang managed 15 operations simultaneously. The room reflected his organized chaos. Mulan did not say much. She was not a talkative person during large moments. However, she sat with Shen Lang for a while. They shared the quiet after the danger. Their silence was more communicative than words. A shift happened between Mulan and Shen Lang. Neither of them had named it yet. The political marriage was becoming something else. This was something they had not planned. Mulan was not a person who fell in love easily. She had been isolated for too long. Her instinct was to evaluate everything with precision. She applied this logic to both feelings and tactics. However, Shen Lang kept passing her evaluations. He succeeded every single time. Shen Lang was brilliant, but not arrogant. He was strategic without being cold. He respected the capabilities of Mulan. He asked for her opinion and used it. Shen Lang remained consistent through many trials. He had dealt with enemies and near death. Mulan decided that she was one of his people. She had not said it out loud. She would not say it for a while. The decision was already made. Shen Lang was very good at reading people. He noticed the change in her. Shen Lang also made a decision. He expressed his choice through his actions. He ensured the people under his protection stayed safe. This was a reflex for him. It was the thing that drove him. Mulan was under his protection now. This was more philosophical than practical. Mulan could personally defeat most soldiers in the region. Still, the commitment from Shen Lang was real. The siege was over, but the war was not. Military engagements were punctuation marks rather than conclusions. The Imperial faction sent an army because other ideas worked slowly. Once the army failed, the faction returned to those other ideas. They developed better and more patient strategies. The faction had a new instrument. His name was Zhang Chong. Zhang Jin was an arrogant nobleman who underestimated Shen Lang. Zhang Chong was something much more dangerous. He was an antagonist who never underestimated anyone. Zhang Chong approached every situation with cold calculation. He had won difficult games before and knew how to win again. He was connected to the imperial court at a high level. These connections were his native environment. Zhang Chong knew how power moved through the system. He understood the real pressure points of authority. He knew which officials to buy and which officials to destroy. Zhang Chong used the machinery of the empire without leaving visible fingerprints. He had been watching Mythical Turtle City for a long time. He watched Shen Lang specifically since before the siege. Zhang Chong identified emerging threats early and addressed them quickly. He almost intervened earlier but decided against it. He wanted to see the results of the siege. Zhang Chong wondered if the city would fall. He watched to see if the count became manageable. He evaluated the remarkable son-in-law. The siege answered his questions. The son-in-law was more formidable than the intelligence suggested. Zhang Chong made a precise tactical assessment. He decided that Shen Lang could not continue consolidating power. Shen Lang had a commercial network and political relationships. He possessed military intelligence and the backing of the count. Individually, each of these assets was manageable. Together, they would change the balance of the entire region. Zhang Chong needed to address the threat immediately. He targeted Shen Lang while the power base was still new. There were still gaps in the network and vulnerabilities in the position. Some people around Shen Lang had not fully committed. Zhang Chong began moving his pieces. Shen Lang noticed the movement within 10 days. Zhang Chong was not careless. In fact, he was the opposite of careless. However, Shen Lang had tentacles in unmapped places. Some of those places started showing unusual patterns. Conversations changed tone and merchants became evasive. Business relationships dried up without obvious cause. Individually, any one of these events was noise. Together, the events resolved into a signal. Someone new was in the game. This person was careful and well-resourced. The new opponent operated on a longer timeline than Zhang Jin. Shen Lang brought this information to Jin Sakai. He did not have a name or a face yet. He only had the pattern of the movements. The Count listened and asked several questions. Within another week, the Count identified the source as Zhang Chong. The name landed differently in the room than the name of Zhang Jin. Advisors who knew the history of Zhang Chong went quiet. They were not exactly afraid, but they were recalibrating. They reassessed the category of the problem. Shen Lang watched these reactions and cataloged them carefully. The people who knew Zhang Chong would be assets. Those who feared him would be vulnerabilities. Fear created potential pressure points for the other side to exploit. Shen Lang started quietly reinforcing those vulnerable relationships. He did not use threats or demands. Shen Lang provided value and genuine benefits to his partners. He maintained relationships so that loyalty felt like a natural choice. Meanwhile, the first real move from Zhang Chong landed. The move targeted the commercial network. Specifically, it targeted the legitimacy of the operation. Zhang Chong attacked the legal and regulatory framework. This framework allowed products to move through trade channels. Zhang Chong did not try to steal formulas or block distribution. Instead, he went after the paperwork. He targeted imperial trade certifications and provincial licensing. This bureaucratic infrastructure allowed large-scale commerce to function. Zhang Chong used his connections to trigger sudden reviews of certifications. Certain licenses appeared to have irregularities. He created an administrative headache that looked like a normal process. These reviews throttled the commercial operation indefinitely. The plan was elegant and infuriating. It was designed for someone without deep imperial connections. Resolving imperial bureaucratic complications requires using imperial channels. Those channels were the home territory of Zhang Chong. Shen Lang looked at this attack and appreciated the skill. Shen Lang told the Count that Zhang Chong was a real opponent. Jin Sakai agreed with this assessment. Operating against Zhang Chong was a fundamentally different problem. They discussed what to do about the situation. The first option was to fight the bureaucratic battle. They could hire people and call in favors. They could navigate the reviews to restore the licenses. This was the expected response. However, this response played on the home court of Zhang Chong. Shen Lang did not love this option. The second option was to route around the problem. They could restructure the commercial operation to avoid the attack channels. This involved creating alternative distribution and certifications. Redundancy would make any single choke point less critical. This was a viable but expensive choice. The third option was to make the conflict too expensive for Zhang Chong. Shen Lang kept coming back to this idea. Zhang Chong was not operating out of pure spite. He wanted to protect the interests of the imperial faction. He also wanted to maintain his personal political position. Shen Lang spent 3 days thinking about the goals of his opponent. A picture emerged regarding trade routes. Provincial trade connections ran through the New River County area. Controlling these routes provided economic leverage over multiple provinces. The imperial faction wanted this control. Zhang Chong was the instrument for securing that control. The commercial network of Shen Lang was the primary obstacle. Another year of growth would make the network dominant. Whoever controlled the network effectively controlled the route. Zhang Chong was trying to capture the network, wheel the growth. He wanted to force the Jin family into an imperial partnership. Once Shen Lang saw this, the game board reorganized. The leverage of Zhang Chong depended on the need for imperial certifications. Removing that dependency would make the leverage evaporate. The bureaucratic attack would become pointless. Shen Lang looked for another legitimizing authority. He made inquiries through his network and political connections. He sought a noble house with the standing to certify trade. The authority needed to be independent of imperial channels. He found a legitimate alternative framework. The details were complicated and involved a distant noble house. This house had historical trade authority from an earlier dynasty. The authority had been dormant for 40 years. Nobody in recent memory had needed to use it. It was technically valid and legally defensible. Zhang Chong did not account for this in his attack. An opponent would need to know the authority existed. They would need to understand the legal basis and the political situation. Shen Lang had been cataloging regional history since he arrived. He filled his mental database with useful information. The negotiation with the noble house took 2 weeks. Shen Lang handled the process through intermediaries. The backing of Jin Sakai gave the proposal weight. The terms were good for the other house. They received a percentage of a dominant commercial network. The noble house agreed to the terms. The dormant trade authority was activated. News of the activation reached Zhang Chong. Shen Lang wished he could have seen the reaction in person. Zhang Chong was too controlled to show emotion externally. Internally, the calculation was likely disorienting. His target found a 40-year-old authority and weaponized it quickly. Zhang Chong played a sophisticated game. However, his opponent did something he thought was impossible. The commercial network resumed full operation. The network used the new certification framework. The imperial review process continued, but no longer mattered. Those channels were no longer critical infrastructure. Zhang Chong was attacking a position that Shen Lang had vacated. The cost of the operation was significant. The strategic outcome was worth every coin. Shen Lang demonstrated that the home court advantage was not absolute. Zhang Chong was smart enough to update his assessment. An updated assessment resulted in different tactics. The new tactics were more personal. Suppose a commercial network cannot be strangled through bureaucracy. Imagine that direct force has already been tried and failed. What options remain for an enemy? The answer is reputation and social standing. This involves a specific form of vulnerability. A position often depends on how others perceive a person. Zhang Chong decides to start a whisper campaign. This is not unusual in the political environment of this world. Information can destroy people who have survived physical armies. These specific whispers are designed to hit multiple targets simultaneously. They target the legitimacy of Shen Lang within the Jin household. They target the confidence of the Count in his son-in-law. They also target the trust of commercial partners. The content of the whispers is a mix of facts and lies. Some of the information is fabricated. Other parts are real details given a different context. This makes the information look like something else entirely. The nature of the reincarnation remains unknown. Nobody in this world knows Shen Lang has a foreign soul and a mental laptop. However, many things about him are genuinely strange. These traits allow a narrative of deception to be built. People ask why he knows things he should not know. They wonder why he can do things no one taught him. Zhang Chong plants these questions carefully in the right ears. He wants people to question who Shen Lang is actually working for. Shen Lang becomes aware of the campaign after 1 week. The commercial intelligence network spotted the initial moves of Zhang Chong. The specific shape of the campaign tells him the goal. He sees that doubts are being cultivated. The external commercial relationships do not concern him most. Those are built on demonstrated value and can be shored up. The part that concerns him is closer to home. Jin Sakai is a man who reasons from evidence. Jin Sakai has updated his assessment of Shen Lang multiple times. However, he was also recently betrayed by Su Nan. That betrayal is a very fresh wound. The Whisper campaign is designed to echo that specific betrayal. The rumors aim at a man whose defenses are currently raw. Shen Lang must address this before it reaches critical mass. He requests a private meeting with the Count. Jin Sakai agrees to the meeting immediately. This agreement is a small relief to Shen Lang. It means the whispers have not created enough friction yet. The Count is not yet avoidant. The meeting is the most direct conversation they have had. Shen Lang lays out what he knows about the campaign. He explains how it works and what it should accomplish. He shows the Count the evidence of the hand of Zhang Chong. Then he does something he has avoided until now. He shows the Count more of himself. He does not show everything about his past life or the mental laptop. This world does not have a framework for those things. Leading with that truth would produce a bad outcome. Instead, he shows enough to explain his unusual knowledge. He gives the Count a framework that is more accurate than a fool. It is also more comprehensible than an impossible genius. He is a man with unusual sources. He is committed to this family and this city. He has a track record the Count can evaluate. The Count compares this record against the whispers. He finds the whispers lacking. Jin Sakai listens to all of it without interrupting. When Shen Lang finishes, the Count is quiet for a long moment. Then the Count says something that Shen Lang will remember. He values a man who speaks before a problem arrives. A man who comes to you early is different from one who waits. The Count has encountered both types in his career. He knows which one to trust. This realization strengthens their relationship. The people of Zhongchong check on the progress of the campaign. It is not producing the fractures they designed. The count is not pulling back from his son-in-law. The commercial partners are not distancing themselves. The target environment is more resilient than the design accounted for. Zhongchong recalibrates his plans again. While he recalibrates, Shen Lang is not sitting still. He has been building a counter-operation the whole time. Shen Lang learned about the interests and vulnerabilities of Zhongchong. He turns this knowledge into a trap. The activation of the trade authority gave him an idea. The power of Zhongchong is not unlimited. He has allies, but he also has rivals in the court. Other officials would benefit if his position weakened. They have been waiting for a moment where he is exposed. In court politics, nobody is universally secure. Everyone has enemies. The enemies of Zhongchong just need something to work with. Shen Lang has been quietly building a dossier. He used observations from his commercial network to gather facts. He reconstructed the operations of Zhongchong from past years. He noted the bureaucratic attacks run against other targets. He found financial flows that connect him to certain officials. These connections are not entirely clean. Zhongchong has been maneuvering to control trade in 3 other regions. Shen Lang does not have a complete picture of the court. However, he has enough to interest the rival faction. The delivery mechanism is elegant. The documents do not come from Shen Lang or the Jin family. The information moves through 3 layers of intermediaries. It arrives at its destination looking like it came from an unconnected source. The rivals receive a very interesting package. What happens inside the imperial court is partially obscured. Shen Lang does not have visibility into the specific conversations. He cannot see the moves and countermoves. However, he has enough indicators to track the effects. The attention of Zhongchong finally shifts. The pressure on mythical Turtle City decreases. This happens because the enemy is dealing with problems at home. These problems require his energy and political capital. Someone handed his enemies a powerful weapon. The commercial network now operates freely. The siege is several months in the past. The Whisper campaign has fizzled without producing results. The primary antagonist is now occupied with his own problems. These issues will keep him busy for several months. Shen Lang sits in his workroom and exhales. This is not a final victory. Zhongchong is not a problem that resolves permanently. He will be back with better intelligence and revised tactics. This bought time rather than a resolution, but time is exactly what Shen Lang needs. The commercial network is growing every month. The position of the Jin family is stronger than before. The successful defense gave them a new reputation. Neighboring noble houses now factor them into calculations. Alliances are forming and commercial relationships are deepening. The medical reputation has expanded across provinces. Every month, the position becomes more solid. The cost of attacking Shen Lang continues to rise. He just needs enough months to finish his work. In the middle of this, something unplanned happens. Mulan comes to find him, late one evening. She does not come for military planning or tactical discussion. She does not ask about the commercial network or operations. She just comes to find him. She sits across from him and looks at him directly. Mulan has made a decision. She tells him that he is not leaving. This is a statement of fact rather than a question. Shen Lang understands immediately what she means. He thinks about the political marriage and the convenient arrangement. He thinks about the exit that was once available to him. He could have taken that path if things became difficult. Shen Lang tells her that he is not leaving. She nods once as if she already knew. She needed to hear the words anyway. A moment of silence follows that is not uncomfortable. Then she says she would have come to find him. This is the most significant thing she has said to him. Shen Lang has survived many dangers and political enemies. However, this statement from Mulan affects him deeply. He smiles, which is a rare sight for her. Mulan notices the gesture immediately. She does not say anything about the smile. However, the corners of her mouth move slightly. It is the closest she comes to smiling back. These 2 people came together through calculation. They stayed together because of their shared competence. Now they have arrived at an unexpected place. They have honesty and a shared understanding. They realize they are building the same thing together. Zhongchong returned. Of course he did. 3 months of relative quiet passed. The imperial court kept him occupied for that time. Shen Lang's network grew undisturbed. Mythical Turtle City settled into a new normal. This new situation was significantly better than the old one. Mulan drilled her cavalry during these 3 months. Professional soldiers from other regions watched her progress with unconcealed envy. 3 months was all the time they received. Then the pressure started again. The pressure took a different shape this time. However, the source remained the same. Zhang Chong had done his homework. The first campaign taught Zhang Chong a lesson. He learned that Shen Lang was not predictable through conventional frameworks. Shen Lang could not be starved out commercially. Bureaucratic friction could not break him. Whisper campaigns could not isolate Shen Lang from the count. Finally, military force could not intimidate him. Zhang Chong stopped trying to attack the position. Instead, he started trying to attack the foundation. That foundation was legitimacy. Shen Lang's entire operation included commercial, medical, and political efforts. His work relied on a basic premise that the people accepted. They believed Shen Lang was exactly who he presented himself to be. He was a man of unusual talent. Furthermore, he was committed to the Jin family. He operated in good faith within the structures of this world. Zhang Chong's revised campaign targeted a specific question. Shen Lang had never been able to answer this question cleanly for a public audience. The campaign asked where his knowledge originated. This did not come from a person asking innocently. Instead, it came from a coordinated and multi-front effort. They raised the question loudly enough that it became impossible to ignore. This happened in formal settings and official documentation. It also happened in public forums where powerful people had to respond on the record. The specific framing was clever. Zhang Chong did not call him a demon or a fraud. Such claims were too blunt and easy to dismiss. Instead, the framing was more sophisticated. It suggested that no one could account for certain things about Shen Lang. This included his knowledge and his methods. It also included the outcomes of his interventions. Zhang Chong invoked actual imperial authority rather than just personal connections. He claimed the imperial court had a legitimate interest in his unusual capabilities. These capabilities were operating at a significant scale in the provinces. The effort was framed as an official investigation. It was bureaucratic and appeared legitimate on its surface. Shen Lang read the opening move and understood what was happening. This was not an investigation designed to find answers. Instead, the investigation aimed to create the appearance of a problem. It suggested that something wrong needed answering. In this world, an official imperial inquiry was damaging by itself. A cloud remained regardless of what the inquiry produced. Commercial partners became nervous. Political allies began to calculate their exposure. The Count's ability to back his son-in-law became complicated. Defending someone under imperial scrutiny created poor optics. This was the most sophisticated attack yet. It was working to a small degree. Shen Lang saw slight hesitation in a merchant partner. This partner had been unreservedly enthusiastic 3 months ago. An allied noble house used more careful language in their correspondence. Questions reached Shen Lang secondhand from people who did not want to ask him directly. The investigation created uncertainty. Uncertainty was the primary product of Zhang Chong. Shen Lang had two options. The first option was to cooperate with the investigation. He could submit to the process and answer the questions. He could trust that investigators would find nothing. Technically, there was nothing to find. His formulas were real. His medical interventions were genuine. Furthermore, his commercial operations were legally clean. An honest investigation would produce nothing actionable. However, an investigation controlled by Zhang Chong would not be honest. Zhang Chong would manage and direct the process. He would shape it to find his own conclusion. Cooperating with the process meant cooperating with a trap. The second option was to challenge the legitimacy of the investigation. Shen Lang could contest the authority behind the inquiry. He could force a public legal and political argument. This argument would focus on imperial standing under current treaty structures. This approach was aggressive and risked escalation. However, it forced the conflict into a different arena. The Count's lawyers and political allies had genuine standing there. Shen Lang brought both options to Jin Sakai and Mulan simultaneously. Jin Sakai immediately leaned toward the second option. He had been in political conflicts for a long time. He knew that submitting to an illegitimate process made it seem legitimate. One must fight the frame rather than the question inside it. Mulan's assessment was more tactical. She wanted to know what resources the escalation path required. She also asked about potential vulnerabilities. Contesting the investigation might fail. The imperial court might validate the authority of Zhang Chong. If the inquiry proceeded on his terms, a fallback was needed. Shen Lang had a plan and explained it. The fallback was the one thing he was most reluctant to use. He considered a direct and public demonstration of his capability. This scale would make questions about his origins irrelevant. The answer would become obvious. He would not show his mental laptop or the full truth. Instead, he would give a performance. This would be a controlled display of medical and chemical knowledge. This knowledge was far beyond anything available in this world. The only reasonable conclusion would be that he was a genius. He wanted to make the question foolish by making the answer overwhelming. The risk of this plan was significant. Shen Lang would step fully into the light. He would no longer be a background operator. Instead, he would become a clearly visible primary player. This made him a target in a different way. Previously, Zhang Chong could attack him through the system. However, an openly celebrated figure was harder to attack. Bureaucracy and whispers would be less effective against him. This path was also more visible to the imperial court. It would attract more than just the faction of Zhang Chong. The emperor might give him actual attention. People who made decisions about extraordinary individuals would notice him. This was a much larger game than anything Shen Lang had played before. He sat with this thought for a night. Then he decided to use both options simultaneously. The legal challenge launched through the Count's official channels. They sent letters to specific imperial officials. They made arguments about treaty standing. A formal contestation of the authority of the investigation was submitted. This was signed by the Count and another noble house. This house was located 3 provinces away. Shen Lang had activated their dormant trade authority. 2 established noble houses created a different political weight together. This was stronger than one house acting alone. Zhang Chong did not account for that alliance. He was learning a recurring lesson. Shen Lang's relationships were deeper than his intelligence suggested. Furthermore, those relationships were more useful. The legal challenge bought time for the team. It also created political friction for Zhang Chong. Meanwhile, Shen Lang prepared his demonstration. He chose the venue carefully. There was a gathering for provincial physicians and merchants. Scholars also attended this annual assembly. It had been held in a nearby city for generations. This city was 2 days away from mythical Turtle City. The intellectual and commercial elite of the region came together there. Reputations were made and destroyed at this event. What people witnessed there would spread through their networks for months. Shen Lang requested to present at the assembly. This was an unusual request. He was not a registered physician in the traditional sense. His medical practice had been conducted informally. He relied on relationships rather than official credentials. However, the request was backed by the Jin family. It included a summary of specific cases. The reviewing committee became very interested indeed. Consequently, they granted him the presentation slot. Mulan insisted on accompanying him with a security complement. Shen Lang accepted this without argument. He was not foolish enough to walk into a public forum. An active campaign by Zhang Chong was underway. He needed the safety net provided by Mulan. The journey was uneventful, but the arrival was not. The intelligence network of Zhang Chong was good. The man knew about the presentation. He could not stop it through official channels. The legal challenge had created enough friction already. Overt interference would look retaliatory and damage his position. However, he could send observers to the event. He also arranged for other presenters to ask pointed questions. Shen Lang knew this before he walked into the hall. He walked in anyway. The presentation began with real medical cases. He showed documented patients and their conditions. He also presented the outcomes from his interventions. Shen Lang presented them with clinical precision. He used the terminology of this world. At the same time, he embedded his actual knowledge. The attending physicians followed the early cases easily. The work seemed standard, but unusually well-reasoned. Then Shen Lang escalated his presentation. Case 4 was familiar to 3 physicians in the room. They had collectively failed to diagnose this patient correctly. This failure had lasted for several months. Shen Lang presented the correct diagnosis and the condition mechanism. He also showed the treatment pathway. This was a demonstration rather than a criticism. He explained what was missed and why. Finally, he showed how to catch it next time. The room became quieter. Case 7 involved a compound that Shen Lang had developed. This compound was already distributed through his commercial network. He presented its composition and mechanism of action. He also listed contraindications and efficacy studies. Shen Lang invited any chemist or physician to evaluate it. Several people did so on the spot. The compound was exactly what he claimed. It performed exactly as he described. The room was very quiet now. Case 10 was the one he had been building toward. This medical condition was considered untreatable in this world. The most respected physicians documented it as fatal. Shen Lang presented a cure mechanism instead of a treatment. He explained the underlying biology in detailed terms. This challenged the framework of the assembled audience. Shen Lang had a patient present in the room. This person previously suffered from the condition. However, the patient did not have it anymore. The patient stood up. A deep silence followed this revelation. This happens when intelligent people encounter something new. Their understanding of what is possible reorganizes. The observers sent by Zhang Chong watched all of this. Their job was to ask pointed questions. They wanted to introduce doubt about his origins. They intended to raise suspicions of an unnatural origin. One observer tried to speak. He was a physician with imperial court connections. The physician used the careful language of formal inquiry. He asked what the sources of Shen Lang were. He questioned where this knowledge originated. The physician asked what institution or tradition produced these results. The entire room turned to look at Shen Lang. Shen Lang looked at the questioner for a moment. He ran a quick scan out of habit. Then he answered the man. He stated that knowledge had no single origin. Shen Lang had studied extensively and synthesized multiple traditions. He spent years developing the frameworks they evaluated. He invited the questioner to identify a specific claim. The man could choose any compound or case outcome. He asked the observer to find an error. Shen Lang challenged him to demonstrate any fraud. He paused and gave the room space. Nobody took the invitation. There was no error, there was no fraud, there was only demonstrated and testable capability. In a room full of scientists and practitioners, demonstrated evidence defeated theoretical suspicion. The questioner sat down. What followed was 3 hours of the most intense professional engagement Shen Lang had experienced in either of his lives. The assembled physicians and scholars were freed from the initial shock. They came at him with questions, challenges, and edge cases. They presented conditions he had not mentioned. They also described phenomena that existing frameworks did not explain. Shen Lang answered all of them. He answered some immediately and others after a moment's thought. He provided caveats and acknowledged the limits of current knowledge. The caveats landed harder than the confident answers. A person who knew where their knowledge ended was more credible than one who claimed unlimited certainty. The room read this correctly. By the time it ended, something had shifted in the air. These were not primarily political people. They were practitioners who thought in outcomes and evidence. They witnessed the most significant expansion of their professional framework in their careers. Their instinctive response was not suspicion. Instead, they wanted more. Several of them approached Shen Lang afterward. Physicians wanted to discuss specific cases. Chemists wanted access to the compound documentation. Scholars wanted to understand the analytical frameworks he used. The conversation continued in smaller groups through the evening. Shen Lang participated in all of it genuinely and energetically. He engaged with everything he actually cared about. This was the part of his nature that did not need strategy. Intellectual engagement and problem-solving were his core strengths. He applied knowledge to suffering in ways that produced relief. This was what he was in his first life, and it was what he was here. The revenge and political warfare were merely responses to circumstances. Mulan watched all of it from a position with visibility to the whole room. She was not following the technical content. She did not pretend otherwise, because that was not her domain. However, she read the reaction of the room with a tactical eye. She saw her husband becoming someone that the intellectual community of the region knew. They wanted access to him. His existence was now documented in the memory of 100 witnesses. These witnesses would carry what they saw back to every province they represented. Zhang Chong could not uninvent this. The investigation narrative required uncertainty. It required that people looked at Shen Lang and did not know what to think. What today produced was the opposite. People knew exactly what to think. They thought this man was extraordinary and verifiably so. They wanted him to keep doing his work. That was the end of the investigation narrative as a weapon. Zhang Chong received reports from his observers over the following days. He performed the precise and painful calculation of a strategist. He had run out of indirect approaches. Every vector he had tried had failed. The commercial attack was routed around. The whisper campaign was absorbed. The military option was defeated. The bureaucratic approach was challenged and became politically costly. The legitimacy attack backfired spectacularly. What remained was either personal and direct or a total withdrawal. A direct attack risked everything, including his own position. Withdrawal meant he would recalculate, regroup, and find a longer timeline. Zhang Chong was smart enough to know which option was correct. He withdrew. He did not do so permanently or with any stated acknowledgement. It looked like the attention of the imperial court simply moved to other priorities. In the complex machinery of imperial politics, this was always plausible. Cases were deprioritized and investigations were tabled. Officials were reassigned to other concerns. But Shen Lang knew the truth. Zhang Chong also knew that Shen Lang understood. A message traveled unspoken between them through the distance of their positions. It was professional in the cleanest sense. It acknowledged that Shen Lang was better than accounted for. This round went to Shen Lang, but the game continued. Shen Lang respected this. A clean retreat by a capable opponent was more dangerous than a messy one. It meant the opponent learned and would return improved. Zhang Chong would be back with updated intelligence and revised tactics. Shen Lang would be ready, but that was a problem for the future. At that moment, Shen Lang was riding back toward mythical Turtle City with Mulan beside him. He felt the satisfaction of a man who had publicly become something permanent. The ride back took 2 days. The first day was mostly quiet as they processed what the last week had produced. Mulan was tactical about it. She ran through implications and identified changes in their position. She calculated what the enthusiasm of the physician community meant for the commercial network. Shen Lang listened to her think out loud and added suggestions. He stayed quiet when she worked through things alone. On the second day, the landscape opened up. There was nothing pressing requiring their attention. Mulan said something unexpected. She asked him what he personally and actually wanted for his life. She asked about his desires in this world he had navigated through sheer intelligence. It was the kind of question that assumed he had an answer. She believed his existence was not just defined by problems and enemies. He thought about it honestly for a few minutes of riding in silence. Then he told her. He wanted what he was building to last. He wanted it to become something that outlived the current political moment. He wanted a commercial network that was part of the infrastructure of the region. He wanted a medical practice that trained people to spread knowledge. He wanted a stable political position for the Jin family. He wanted to stop being reactive and become permanent. He also said he wanted the life he built with her at the center. Mulan rode for a moment, then she stated that his desire was a reasonable want. From Mulan, this was equivalent to writing poetry. Shen Lang smiled his rare smile. She did not comment on it. But she moved her horse slightly closer to his for the rest of the ride. They arrived at mythical Turtle City in the late afternoon. The gates opened for the cavalry of the Jin family with efficiency. The city received them with a particular quality of attention. People had started to understand that Shen Lang mattered. Jin Sakai was waiting for them. He had heard the preliminary reports and wanted the full account. Shen Lang gave it to him in a complete and unvarnished way. He included the assessment of the withdrawal of Zhang Chong. He explained what it meant for the timeline of his return. The Count listened to all of it. Then he did something he had not done before. In front of his senior advisors, he formally named Shen Lang as a minister. Shen Lang became the commercial and intelligence minister of mythical Turtle City. This was not a courtesy title. It was an actual function with official authority and backing. It was a declaration to the city and anyone paying attention. This man was not a useful fool or a political tool. He was the son-in-law and the minister. He operated with the full authority of the House of the Count. The advisors in the room received this with relief. They had watched him dismantle every threat over the past year. Shen Lang accepted the appointment with quiet steadiness. He thanked the Count. He identified 3 immediate priorities he wanted to address in the new capacity. Then he got to work. That was who he was at his core. He was the man who woke up in a body that lost fights to chickens. He was in a world that called him a fool and wanted him dead. He responded by building something. He was still building and still moving. The enemies were temporarily quiet. The position was stronger than it had ever been. A woman moved her horse closer to his when he shared his dreams. The city was intact, and the house of the Count was secure. The network kept growing. He was not safe in any permanent sense. Zhang Chong was out there recalibrating. The imperial court had noticed the extraordinary son-in-law. This would eventually require its own navigation. The political landscape of the Yu Kingdom was always shifting and producing new threats. But in the present tense of this evening, Shen Lang was where he wanted to be. Mulan was in the next room and the Count had given his endorsement. He had defeated 1 year of enemies who tried and failed. The fool they buried alive was now the minister of the city. He was ready for whatever came next.